I am going to start this message out with two stories. The first story, I wasn't planning on doing, but as I was writing this, I had the idea of the horse and the donkey, and then I thought about this story, and it was back from 1992. I was 14 years old. I was in the youth group at my home church. Now, I grew up in church. Like, my grandfather was a pastor. My great-grandfather was a pastor. My parents might as well have been pastors because they sure did preach to me a lot. And so we were always at church. And I got to the point where I thought that I hated church. Like, I was just so tired of going to church every Sunday, every Wednesday. I hated the drive to church. I hated seeing the building. Like, I felt like I was forced to be there. And my mom, she was very big on me being a part of the youth group. Here's the thing. I didn't want to be a part of the youth group. There's one time I remember specifically that they did like a snow cone fundraiser at Winn-Dixie, and my mom woke me up. I didn't even know that we were going there, and got there, pulled up in front of the youth pastor and the youth, and made me get out. It was miserable. One, who sells snow cones in December, even in Florida? It's ridiculous. Like, we sold like 5 snow cones. But, so 14 years old, I didn't really like going. Now, at 14, the church decided we needed a youth pastor. So what they did is they took up pledges. They didn't have the money for a youth pastor, so different people pledged different amounts for that. We ended up getting the youth pastor. It was this one dude. The guy's name was Garen. Now, I didn't care who the youth pastor was because I wasn't going to talk to him. I wasn't going to hang out with them. It's like, whatever. All I need is another pastor in my life. Like, give me a break. I remember him coming to talk to me his first Sunday, and I was just like, whatever, dude. So one day I was sitting at home, and I got a phone call, and it was Garen. Garen called me, and he said, hey, Jimmy, I got 2 tickets to wrestling. I already talked to your parents. They said that you can go. You want to go. Now, I speak wrestling. If you were here at the beginning of the service, you know. So I was like, yeah, that'd be awesome. He came and picked me up. Now, here's the thing. I found out later that dude did not even like wrestling. But he took the time to connect with me. And that was a turning point in my life because I was like, you know what? Maybe all pastors aren't the same. Maybe there are some people that are just real. And I'll tell you this. I do not remember one message that Garen ever spoke. Not one. But I remember all the times that he connected with me, the times that we hung out as a youth group, the relationships that I made in that youth group. We have people in this church that was a part of that youth group that I still consider family. There's other people that were in that youth group. Like, we are still close. I remember, like, when youth group would get over, like, the parents would have to drag us out of the youth room because we just wanted to be there all night. We would just hang out and play ping pong and foosball. And here's the cool thing. You're like, why are you telling me this? Because just last week we announced our new youth pastor and his wife, Kevin and Rachel. And this Wednesday was their first official Wednesday. They actually did the Wednesday before, but that was just, they just volunteered to do that. But I saw the same thing happen. I saw our youth, when service got out, they were hanging out, playing hangman in the room, just hanging out, just together. Like, Kevin and Rachel didn't end up leaving until like 10 o'clock at night, just hanging out with our youth. And Rachel has the idea of taking the girls in the youth group, everybody that wants to go, taking them and doing their nails. And I was just so excited because that's how Garen connected with me. And I can say this, and Garen may never see this, but I do want to say this. Garen, thank you for taking the time to invest in my life. You are a big reason why I'm here today. Thank you. I love you. And I'm a donkey. Now, you're like, where's that come from? When I was in the youth group, we went to, and if you were from Fort Pierce or you've ever been in Fort Pierce for a good amount of time, I think they just recently stopped doing it, but Indian River Presbyterian Church had a nativity scene. Our youth group went to that nativity scene. I mean, nothing like a bunch of teenagers nothing excites us as much as a nativity scene. We got there. At that nativity scene, they had a real donkey, not a cardboard donkey. And they had a real donkey. And for some reason, I still do not know why, I walked up to that donkey, got almost like 6 inches to his face, and I just said, "Look at me, I'm a donkey." Garen picked that up, and for the next 5 years, we would say it to each other all the time. "Look at me, I'm a donkey." So that's why I said that, and that's why the title of my message is, "I'm a Donkey." I say all that to tell you this. We have a new youth pastor and his wife. They are not here today. Before they accepted the position, they had an obligation for today, so we knew they weren't going to be here. But I'll say this. I have never seen a youth pastor be able to connect with teenagers the way that Kevin does. And I've just gotten to know Rachel because they just got married recently. But as a church family, my prayer is that we rally around them, serve underneath them, and see the amazing things that God does with the youth ministry at Fairlawn Church. I don't know about you, but I'm excited. Second story I have to tell is not going to be as fun as that one. It's actually one that I've struggled about and gone back and forth about not telling. But I'm going to go ahead and do it. And I'm going to say this because I know if you have been with Julie and I for a while, and you were at Blueprint, you know that the hard way that when I discuss personal stuff that goes on with Julie and I, like real personal stuff, I need to talk with her first. Because there was one time I talked about us being in an argument. Well, that created another argument because she got up in the middle of my message and left. And then I had to finish the message after she left. That, though, brought closeness to us because we started talking about it. And now I learned, okay, we just talk about different stories. So I'll say this. Julie and I do not get into many arguments. We don't do a whole lot of arguing back and forth. And me in the 7-8 years that Julie and I have been together, I'm not a yeller. Like, I probably, not just with, in general, like yelling at anybody. Animals, kids, you guys, maybe L-Dog I yell at sometimes. Probably a handful of times. I can count it on one hand. So it's so out of character for me. So there was this. So of course this is I'm about to share with you guys the biggest argument that Julie and I have ever got into. And yes, Julie knows it's coming. No, she does not know how I'm going to articulate it. So, Julie and I got into this argument. And here's the thing: like when Julie gets upset with me, like she does not like confrontation. So a lot of times she just freezes me out. All right. So I know if she's not talking to me, like if she's not hugging on me, like something's wrong. And I asked her what's wrong, and she wouldn't tell me. We had a night planned. We actually went and saw a theater show that night. Drove there. I don't know if you are married, if you're a spouse, I hope that you have experienced this because I don't want to be the only one in this boat. When you are in an argument, the drive to wherever you're going and the drive back home, no talking, it is the longest drive of your life. Like you hit every red light when that happens, There's like stop signs. You didn't even know that stop sign was there. And like they just put that stop sign there. So that's how the drive there and the drive back was. Now, what Julie likes to do, and I've talked about this before, so I'm sure she's okay with this. She don't want to argue like face to face. She wants to wait till I'm not there. And then she text argues. And then I always say, I am not going to text argue. But here's the thing. She text argues. I ignore it for a certain amount of time. Then I start thinking, how about if she's thinking that I really told him and he has nothing to say? So then I have to text back to let her know I got something to say. You get it. So I decided this night, because she went to bed, and I know, because I'm a pastor, that the Bible says you should not go to bed angry. So I went in there, and I said, we are not doing this. You're not going to send me a text tomorrow. We're going to talk about this right now. Now, I'm just going to say, for the record, I have tried this a number of times, and each and every time, it is with a 0% success rate. I don't know why I keep doing it. Well, I didn't get the response that I wanted because she continued to ignore me. So here's the thing. When that happens, my mind, and which a lot of times people's mind starts thinking about, is we know, like, the triggers, like, what are the triggers? Like, and I'm going to hit one of those triggers, and then, then we're going to talk. So I hit one of those triggers. It worked. But she still, L-Dog, was not understanding what I'm saying and not seeing it my way. So I then thought a good idea to get her to see it my way is I raised my voice to a level as high as my voice would go. Now, after that, though, I started saying words that you would be ashamed to call me one of your pastors saying. I started saying things that I have never said to somebody in my life. Especially not the love of my life. To make things even worse. And I know what you're saying. You're thinking, oh, this is one of those cute little messages, before he was a pastor, before he got saved. No. This is the beginning of November. If you want me to stop now and never come back, I get it. I thought we were the only ones home. As I was yelling, the door flings open, and it is Addison, our oldest daughter. And she comes and she's crying. She's saying, what? Julian says, what did you do? Because it's so out of character. And I'll tell you this. There's nothing like your child walking into the room in a situation like that makes you feel like nothing. I obviously stopped at that point. I went into the bathroom and I sat down on the floor, and eventually at one point I was laying on the floor weeping like a baby. And I remember thinking, who was that? I mean, it's all so blurry. Like, who was that person? Things I never wouldn't say to anybody, and I was saying them to my wife. Why am I telling the story? Because when I feel like there's maybe somebody here and you've been in a spot similar to this, maybe not exactly with anger or control, but a place where you just gave a little, and then at the end of it, you are looking back saying, who is that person? And you don't even recognize that person as you. It takes you a place that you never wanted to go and a place that you never thought you'd be. It's control, it's anger, maybe it's, for you, addiction, maybe it's lust, maybe it's something, I don't know, but I feel like it goes along with my message, but I also feel like I needed to share. We've talked about it since we started Blueprint, is that we're going to be hot, honest, open, and transparent. This is as transparent as it gets. Obviously, Julie forgave me, and we talked about it, and we were discussing it yesterday, just the chain of events after that moment. And I remember telling her, I said, at some point I'm going to share this with the congregation, because I strongly believe God takes what's meant for evil and He turns it for good. So I don't know who you are, and I don't know where you're at, and you're in that place, and you're like, I'm so far in, and I'll never be able to get out, and I can't believe this is my life, and I can't believe this is me, and you don't even recognize yourself, I'm telling you this. God's saying, today, He wants to deliver you from that. So start with 2 stories. Obviously, there's a donkey up here and there's a horse, so obviously I got more stuff to say. So buckle up. So, and I know what you're thinking after I tell that story. You're like, oh, this story ain't about a donkey. This story is just about some old dumb jackass. Fair enough. Now, for you you're like appalled that I said that, I will let you know that I grew up in church. I am very fluent in Christianese. And as a kid, I know the verse. Why do I know the verse? Because as a kid, that was the loophole that allowed us to curse, even in front of our parents. And it's in the King James Version, which, by the way, we all know is the original transcript of the Bible. We know that's the one that Paul used. Miss Hannah, it's not really. 2 Peter 2:16. I want to put it on the screen. I'm not going to read it. Why am I not going to read it? I have a feeling that there is a limit of how many times I can say that word during this message, and I don't want to waste on this, so just read it. So just letting you know, like if you got to finish, it's in the Bible. It says it. All right. It's not on that one, though. You got to go to the next one. Wait, is it? It should be on that one. No, go back. What? That's New King James. It's supposed to be King James Version. Jeez. John, don't say it. All right, guys, I'll see you next week.
Hey, come here, man. I want to talk to you.
So there's some goals I have for this message. Just trust me, King James Version says the word. You can look it up. You got a Bible app. So here's my goal for this message. My goal is that for you, that Jesus gets bigger, that the cross works better, and that the resurrection becomes more central as the scriptures become bigger, not smaller today. I hope at the end of this message you have more questions, not less questions. Because I believe as we explore the Bible and explore the scriptures and have a relationship with God, well, you end up having more questions. And questions are good. Like I think when I was younger, I remember having a Sunday school teacher. I'd ask questions. They said, well, you don't question God. I'm like, I'm not questioning God. I'm questioning you. My questions, but it's like, oh, don't question. Like, no, it's okay to have questions. We should have questions. In fact, if you read the Bible and you don't have questions, like we need to have a conversation because there's definitely some questions. So, but I believe that Jesus is not just someone to believe in. Because why? Because demons believe in Jesus, But I believe that Jesus is more than just someone to believe in. He's someone that we should fundamentally structure our life after and shape our lives and how we see all things. So I want to look at the trial of Jesus, and I know what you're thinking. You're like, why didn't you just save this message for around Easter? I thought about that, but then God wouldn't let me do that, and He said, nope, right now is the time. So here we are. So the trial of Jesus, Luke chapter 23, 1 through 7. We're going to pull it up here on the Sky Bible. You can follow along. If you want to read it in the King James Version, apparently we don't have that one. There it is. Yeah, see? Bad word in the Bible. Told you. All right. That's perfect punchline, John. It worked out great. Luke 19:37 through 40. When he came near the place where the road goes down... Wait, is that right? Am I reading that one? Yeah, right? That is right. Okay, you got me all messed up now. So I'm blaming John. Any mess-ups I do in this message, John's fault. So, he's my brother-in-law, so I can blame him for stuff. And he still has to be married to my sister. All right, Luke 19:37, 40. When he came near the place where the road goes down Mount Olives, the whole crowd of disciples began joyfully... That is not the right verse. All right, Luke 23, 1 through 7. Jeez, I am so sorry. I knew it wasn't the right verse. I also got a new book here. I'm going to blame it on John and the book. All right, Luke 23, 1 through 7. It says, Then the whole assembly rose and led him off to Pilate. And they began to accuse him, saying, We have found this man subverting our nation. He opposes payment of taxes to Caesar and claims to be Messiah. Pilate doesn't really even realize what a Messiah is, so they have to add this part. A king. He's claiming to be a king. Now, right up to that, I want you to recognize this. First of all, they were not accusing Jesus of sin. Why? Pilate wouldn't have cared. That's not his scope of authority or in his scope of even caring. He don't care. They're not accusing him of blasphemy. Why? Pilate don't care. He don't, a God that he don't believe in, he hardly even knows anything about, he don't care about blasphemy. No, what they are accusing Jesus of here is treason. And this gets Pilate's attention. Because, see, back then, a Messiah was not somebody that you believed in to get to heaven. A Messiah was someone that takes the government upon their shoulders, and they believed that the Messiah was going to take over Rome. So that gets Pilate's attention. And Pilate, verse 3, so Pilate asked Jesus, Are you the king of the Jews? Now, I love how Jesus answers this. He's so chill. He's so cool. He's like, You said so. Like, if you say it, hey, I'm in your court. I'm in your place. You say it, okay. Whatever. Verse 4. Then Pilate announced to the chief priests and the crowd, I find no basis to charge this man. No basis charged against this man. In other words, Pilate's saying, I've seen people in treason. I've seen subversive people in Rome. Usually they have a whole mob with them. Usually they're burning stuff down and tearing things apart. I don't see that. This guy seems pretty chill. He don't really fit the bill. Like, I don't see it. But they insisted. They go, no, Pilate, you don't understand. Look, we've seen this guy. Like, they insisted. He stirs up all the people in Judea by his teachings. And he started in Galilee, and he came all the way through here. Now, this gets Pilate's attention because he recognized Galilee. Why? Because Galilee is not in his scope. It's not his territory. So he's like, okay, I can get rid of this. So he says, on hearing this, Pilate asked, the man's Galilean? Yeah, he's Galilean. All right, not my jurisdiction. Get Herod out of bed. And he sent him to Herod, who was also in Jerusalem at the time. Now, in this is kind of a strange story. I have questions. And I believe that maybe you have questions. And if you have questions and I have questions, I want to share my questions, and maybe they'll be the same as your questions, and I'll be able to answer those. So we'll see. So here's the questions that I have. Because on the surface, this is a strange story. It's quite strange. Question number 1. Why is the head honcho getting out of bed to deal with this? I mean, this is really strange. This is like I have a problem with Denise. I'm like, Denise, come with me, and we go to Governor DeSantis' house, and we knock on the door and say, Ron, I have a problem with Denise. And he would be like, it's 2 o'clock in the morning, Jimmy. Why are you getting me out of bed? And I'd be like, oh my gosh, Ron DeSantis knows my name. That's odd, right? Why is the head honcho getting out of bed? Here's the thing. It's not just one, it's 2 head honchos, because now King Herod's having to get out of bed for this. Like, that's weird, right? 2 o'clock in the morning, getting him out of bed in the middle of the night? I got to be like, dude, I'll deal with this tomorrow. Number 2, if Jesus' main message was to believe in him in order to go to heaven, why kill him? Like, that don't seem like something you'd kill somebody for, right? Number 3, if Jesus' main message was to take care of the poor, like, that's not something to kill somebody, is it? Like, share with people that don't have, that's like more from the land of like, duh. Like, of course, yeah, you can do that. Number 4, why not just kill him yourself? Like, did they really need Rome to do the dirty work? Now, part of that answer is easy. Jesus was extremely popular. But did they not have like some backdoor, back alley Jewish mafia that, could get them down some alleys? Like, hey, you just get them over here and down this alley. We'll take care of this Jesus guy. Hey. Did they not have that? Like, why do they need Rome to do their dirty work here? It's kind of strange. And then here's a big question. why was both Pilate and Herod, who lived in Caesarea, in Jerusalem? Like, Jerusalem was the place, like, all the slaves were there, like all the people that were captured, all the Jewish people, like, they were above that. Why did they leave their mansions in Caesarea, and why are they in Jerusalem? So, there's a lot of questions here. And some of the story doesn't make sense. And a lot of times when a story doesn't make sense, you got to then look for the story underneath the story. So what I've been doing is I've been looking at a lot of different history stuff, and I want to explore some history around this because I'm hoping that it will help you to understand like it's helped me to understand. So I'm going to give you a brief history lesson. Now, you may be thinking, Jimmy, I hated history in school. It was my worst subject. I think the Ottoman Empire is a furniture store. Just give me a chance. Maybe you just had a bad history teacher, okay? So, let's give you a brief history. And it started all the way in 40 BC. So we got to work our way all the way up to 2023. So, we can give you another communion cup if you need a snack. So in 40 BC, there was this dude named Julius Caesar. All right? Now, this is Julius Caesar. Obviously, not a real picture of him, but this is Julius Caesar. Now, Julius Caesar was pretty remarkable because he was able to get the whole world under one rule. Also, invented a salad. All right? And in the 1990s, George Clooney made his haircut very popular. So Julius Caesar, a pretty remarkable guy. Now, Julius Caesar also, he claimed to not just be man, but to also be God. The Roman poet Virgil actually said that Julius Caesar was the fullness of God incarnate, and no other name on earth which men can be saved other than the name of Caesar. So now Julius Caesar, he was saved. He was behind enemy lines in Gaul, which is modern-day France. He was saved by this dude named Octavius. Octavius was his nephew. Now, his great-nephew. Now, he saved him. Julius Caesar was so impressed that he had Octavius as his own son and then put him as the next over Rome. So now in BC 44, some people conspired against Julius Caesar, and he was assassinated. He was stabbed 23 times. Some of them good, and he was killed in the Senate. Seriously. So people are like, I don't know if he's God. He's dead, so what do you do when someone dies? You have a funeral. So they have a funeral. Now, it's pretty remarkable what happens at the funeral. At the funeral, there is this bright star that appears in the sky. The Roman historians and historians from China record this as well, that some say that the star lit up the day and night sky for 7 days, maybe a little bit of an exaggeration. Now, we know now that that star was a comet. They actually named that comet. They named it Caesar's Comet. If you go online and Google it, there's actually like a computer software, like it tells you like where the comet is right now. But here's the thing, like how are we going to fact check that? Like you say the comet's somewhere in the universe, I don't know, like that. But it's a real thing, the Caesar's Comet. So this it lit up the sky. Now, if you lived in 44 BC and you did not have a telescope because they were not invented yet, and you thought the world was flat, and you are at the funeral of a dude that said he was God, and you've seen this star that wasn't supposed to be there in the sky that lights up the sky, what are you going to think? You're going to probably think, this is a sign that he was God. And there was many people that said that this was Caesar ascending to heaven to take his place among the council of gods. Now, Octavius, who is now ruling over Rome, he changes his name to Caesar Augustus. And he says, well, that comet, that star, which, by the way, star lighting up the sky, sounds familiar too, doesn't it? Maybe this is why in Matthew, it says when King Herod and Jerusalem saw this star, they were scared. They were worried. Maybe it's because they were like, ooh, we've heard this story again, and what's going to happen now? So Caesar Augustus, he says, well, that star proves that my dad, again, not his dad, but it's made his motto, that it proves that he is God. So if he is God, if my father is God, then I am the Son of God, and I should be worshipped. Now, here's the problem. How are we going to get this message from Spain to India? Mike, there's no social media, there's no internet, there's no Fox News, there's no CNN News, there's not even ESPN News. There's none of that. So how are we going to get this message out? They put it on money. If you ever want to see what they were doing back then, what the government was doing, you just look at their money. This is a Caesar Augustus star coin. That's Caesar Augustus. That is the coin. It's the star of Caesar's comet. That's the star. And in writing, it says, God saves, talking about the Caesars being God. Now, you remember there was this one time in the Bible, and they were trying to trick Jesus, and they were trying to arrest him for treason. And they were like, and they thought they were really clever, and they were like, hey, Jesus, shouldn't we be paying taxes to Caesar? And Jesus, he was quick on his feet, and he said, oh, you know what? I don't have a coin. Does anybody have a coin? Anybody have a coin? Thank you, Mike. Okay, let me. And he takes the coin. Now, you see what's on the coin, right? So he takes this coin with Caesar Augustus on it, and then he says this. He says, give unto Caesar what is Caesar's. Give unto God what is God's. In other words, he's saying, what is the second command? The second command is not to have idols. You're accusing me of something, but you got this other guy that's claiming to be God. You're carrying around his coin in your pocket. I mean, this is like rabbi kung fu here. Like, this is like Jesus dropping the mic on these guys. So, and here's the thing: the kingdom of Caesar, well, it put its image on money, and people was the commodity. But the kingdom of Christ, he puts his image on people, and money is the commodity. This is a story about the priority of how we see stuff and how we see people. 37 BC, there was this dude named Herod the Great. He was the king, and Herod the Great, he took Caesar's side during the Civil War, which was a good move on his part because Caesar won. He took his side, and Caesar rewarded him with this token kingship of being the king of Israel. Now, Herod the Great, he dies in 4 BC. So what do? They divide Israel up into 3 locations: Judea, Galilee, and the north. Judea goes to his son Archelaus, Galilee goes to his son Herod Antipas, and the north goes to his son Philip. Archelaus made a mess of things. He is terrible. He made a complete mess of things. So in 22 AD, Caesar removes him and he banishes him to Gaul. Anybody remember what Gaul is today? France. He banishes him there. Then Caesar replaces Archelaus with this dude named Pilate. Yes, that Pilate. Now, I just want to be clear to this. This Pilate is a cruel man. I know people sometimes we're like, he didn't really want to crucify Jesus. And we kind of no. He was a cruel man. In fact, in 43 AD, they had to remove him as governor because he did the massacre on all these Samaritans, women, children. They were like, nope, you're too much, and they had to remove him as governor. Now, Pilate during this time he had one job, and that one job is to keep the Jewish people from rioting. Don't riot. So he had to keep them from doing that. And that's why he's out of bed. Question is, why is Pilate getting out of bed 2 a.m? Because he can't let them riot. Like, if they started a riot, he would fail his job, and then Caesar would take care of Pilate. So he's like, no, he has to get up. Now, why he has to keep order. Why is he in Jerusalem? Well, he's in Jerusalem because of Passover. And there was an estimated 500,000 Jewish people would get together in Jerusalem, and they would sing and they would worship God during Passover. Imagine if 500,000 people got together in downtown Fort Pierce and they were praying to a different God than ours, and they were praying to be liberated. They were praying for the fall and the destruction of us. I think we'd be a little worried about rioting too. To Jerusalem to keep order. Now, during that time, the number one religion in that area was Caesar worship. But the Jewish people were exempt. Everybody else had to worship Caesar. Jewish people were exempt from that. So during this time of Passover, they could sing their hymns, they could sing their songs, they could worship God. They couldn't do anything. But Pilate, he would come in, and Pilate would ride in on this war horse. And how did Pilate keep order? Well, he had this thing, and it was called the Aquila. And it was an eagle on a flagpole, an eagle on a stick. And what would happen, Pilate would ride in on his war horse, and say if you were worshiping and you were singing, and Pilate comes in and he sees you, and he raises the Aquila, you have to immediately stop. If you continue to sing one more word, he could have you put to death. He could have you killed. So he'd come in, you'd be singing, you'd be worshiping, and he would raise that Aquila, and you would have to stop. See, this story is not about just something that happened back then, but this story is about you. This story is about me. This story is about all of us who come here and we sing and we worship and we have real authentic experiences and we mean it. But then we go home, and at home is this eagle on a stick that says, I have control over your life. What is your eagle on a stick? I'm rejection, and I have control over your life. I have authority over your life. I'm addiction, and I have authority over your life. I'm anger. What is that eagle on a stick for you? See, this story is not just about Jesus coming to earth to save us, but this story is about Jesus wanting to deliver us from that eagle on a stick that dominates our life. And he wants to deliver you today from whatever it is. It's anger, rejection, lust, addiction, whatever it is. So he would come over. Now, Pilate would ride in, and I think we have a map of the first century Jerusalem, and there was in 20 BC, King Herod he started to get worried that maybe Caesar didn't think that he was loyal enough, so he built the temple. He rebuilt the temple in Israel, and what he did is he built a 40-foot size eagle and put it on top of the temple as a testimony, saying that even the Jewish God submits to the authority of Rome. Four overzealous rabbi students went up and they tore that eagle down. They caught them and they burnt them alive. Right here, this is first century Jerusalem. Now, see, can y'all see that? This is the first time I'm trying this little laser pointer. The cats love it. So, now, Pilate would get on his war horse. He'd get the biggest war horse in the cavalry, all right? And he would come in, and he would come down this way from, he lived up here in the F, I guess. And then he'd come down here. Now, this area, this dark area right here, this area is the Valley of Gehenna. Now, several times, most of the time that Jesus talks about hell, he uses the word Gehenna. Now, Pilate would ride down through the valley of Gehenna and see this gate right here. They'd call it the dung gate, or the gate to Gehenna, or the gate of hell. And Pilate would ride in here into Jerusalem. Now, there was somebody else that rode into Jerusalem the first day of Passover. What is his name? So Jesus, who rode on a donkey, he rode in this way. This is Jesus through the Mount of Olives. This way. So Pilate, we got a picture of Pilate, Brandon? Maybe. No, not Pilate. This is the one with the horse. Is on the horse. Pilate would get the biggest war horse. He'd get his Aquila and he would ride in to Jerusalem. Jesus would come in riding on a donkey. Now, Mount Olive. Now, I didn't know this, and this is like just, I thought this was just huge and like just a big revelation here. You may not know this, but Mount Olive has no olives on the Mount Olive. Actually, we got some pictures of Mount Olive. Mount Olive is the biggest cemetery you've ever seen in your life. The ground is so hard you cannot dig into the ground. So they build these little these caskets or whatever they are, and they would put people, and it's just like bumper to bumper caskets here. Like in this graveyard, you have several prophets. You have Malachi, Micah, Zechariah. They're all buried in this cemetery. This is the cemetery. This cemetery is over 300,000 years old. They have not been able to bury people in this cemetery for hundreds of years because of how many caskets there. And so, what is in a cemetery? No, not there is dead bodies, but these stones. Stones. So you'd have these stone caskets in this cemetery that Jesus would be coming through. Now, Matthew 21, 1 through 5. I want to read Matthew's account of this story. Matthew. Yeah. It says, as they approached Jerusalem and came to Bethphage on Mount of Olives, Jesus sent 2 disciples, saying to them, go to the village ahead of you, and at once you'll find a donkey tied there, with a colt by her. Untie them and bring them to me. If anyone says anything to you, say that the Lord needs them, and he will send them right away. There would be some people that would teach on this and say that Jesus is a donkey thief. So some people would. Maybe somebody in here is probably not paying attention right now. And then he says, this took place to fulfill what was spoken through the prophet. And then he says this. He goes, say to daughter Zion, see your king comes to you, gentle and riding on a donkey, and on a colt, the foal of a donkey. Now, this is what they call a remez. You know what a remez is? A remez is like a hint. So let's say that the U.S. government said, you know what, we're banning all Bibles. We're getting rid of all Bibles, all electronic copies of Bibles, all paper copies of Bibles. We're getting rid of that. They would have this problem. They cannot get rid of what's up here. Also, if they're doing that, they probably don't really know what's in the Bible. So people would get really creative of this, and they would say this remez. So they would quote something, and then somebody else would finish the quote in their head. So like if I would say, for God so loved the world, and then you would finish it in your head, right? If I said, all things work together for, and then you would finish it in your head. And this happened, the Jewish people did this all the time. So this is what Matthew's doing here. And because like you look at this and you're like, spoke through what prophet? And like, why didn't he name the prophet? Like why didn't he finish it? So we're going to finish it. We're going to look at Zechariah 9 through 10. This is the prophecy that Matthew is talking about. It says, rejoice, greatly, daughter Zion. Shout, daughter Jerusalem. See, your king comes to you, righteous and victorious, lowly, and riding on a donkey, on a colt and a foal of a donkey. That's where Matthew ended it. Let's read the rest of it. I will take away the chariots of Ephraim and the war horse of Jerusalem. and the battle bow will be broken. He will proclaim peace to the nations. His rule will extend from sea to sea and from river to the end of the earth. Woo! I think I know why Matthew left this part out. Like, he was particular about living. But when he would made this announcement, the Jewish people, they would know what the prophecy said, and they would finish it in their head. So when Jesus came in from the Mount of Olives riding on a donkey, they were already singing songs, and now they're so excited that they're like, it's so loud, and they're singing praises to this new king. Luke 19:37-40. It says, when he came near the place where the road goes to Mount Olives, the whole crowd of disciples began joyfully to praise God in loud voices for all the miracles they had seen. Blessed is the King who comes in the name of the Lord. Like, blessed is the King. Hold on, that's treason. So there would be some people, and I know the Pharisees, like we really bash the Pharisees here, and there's, in church and all that, and it's I think a lot of it's warranted. But here, they go to Jesus and they're like, you hear what they're saying? You need to tell them to quiet down. Like, Pilate's in town. Like, maybe, in 7 days, fine. Pilate's in town. If he hears us, he's going to come in and he's going to wipe us all out. He's going to kill all of us, and he would have done that. So the Pharisees, they come and they say, you know what, tell them to be quiet. Tell them to quiet it down. So what does Jesus say? He says, some of the Pharisees in the crowd said to Jesus, Teacher, rebuke your disciples. And he says, I tell you, he replied, if they keep quiet, the stones will cry out. Now, here's the thing. My whole life, I've been taught, I've taught this. When I was a kid in youth group, we would sing a song, there ain't no rock. And then the other people would go, sing in my place. And then the others would go, whoop, whoop. And then as long as I'm alive to glorify his holy name. And we'd go sing that. And it's a lot of times if we don't praise, the roads are going to woo. It's kind of weird, right? But here, Jesus is walking in with all these gravestones. And he says, if they stop, the stones would cry out. What was he talking about? And here's the thing. You're going to love this part. This isn't just something cute that he said. This was prophecy because it happened. This actually happened. Matthew 27:51. It says this. It says, at that moment, the curtain, Jesus is hanging on the cross. This is a time where there ain't nobody crying out and worshiping him. Even his disciples are behind closed doors. They are scared. Am I next? There is nobody worshiping Jesus at this time. At that moment, the curtain of the temple was torn in two from top to bottom. The earth shook, the rocks split, and the tombs broke open. Where are the tombs? They are Mount Olives. And the bodies of many holy people who had died were raised to life. The rocks cried out. Pilate walks through. Can we put the map back up there? And I'm closing. And Pilate comes this way through the gates of hell. Jesus comes to the Mount of Olives into Jerusalem. If we looked at your life, if we looked at our lives right now, would our lives look more like Pilate on the war horse? Or would it look like Jesus on the donkey? Because there's a lot of Christians and there's a lot of churches that are riding around on war horses and saying they're doing it in the name of Jesus. And they're ruling on a war horse. Jesus steps up and says, yeah, they can stop praising me. You may not want that to happen because we're going to get a pretty bad episode of The Walking Dead if it does. And then it happened. But as we look here at our lives, how are we going to live? How are we going to structure our lives? How are we going to intentionally live our lives? Warhorse or donkey? Why did they kill Jesus? They killed him because he was confronting people who were controlling the temple and working with Pilate and using people and people's gifts so that they could live in mansions and reign and rule over people. They killed Jesus because he was confronting religion. 2 ways to build your life: ruling empire or humble servant. Are you going to have a kingdom like Caesar? Or are you going to help build the kingdom of Jesus? You have 2 ways to be a husband. You can rule. I'm the head of the house. By the way, if you got to tell people you're in charge, probably not really in charge.
That's right.
2 ways you can be a husband. When your wife goes to sleep, falls asleep early, and you can, by the way, this is not what our argument was about. Wake up, woman, I got needs. You're going to say, oh, look at that beautiful woman, the love of my life. She's worked really hard today. I'm going to just let her sleep. You can rule, or you can serve and get up underneath your family and make them better. There's 2 ways to be a wife. My way or the highway. You know the saying, if mama ain't happy, nobody's happy. You can be 2 ways to be a wife. You can be critical, miserable. You can make your husband pray for Caesar's comment to come back to earth and take him out just so he can get relief from you. You can do that. Or you can get up underneath your family and serve and make them better. There's 2 ways to be in that US 1 traffic. That the farther you go south, the worse it gets. 2 ways. You could be like the person that I may have accidentally cut off this morning, and they yelled at me, rolled down the window, yelled at me, and pointed to the sky. Not that finger. Like that. And if that was you, I forgive you. There's 2 ways you can live when that waitress is maybe having a bad day and you're not getting your food on time and things aren't getting right and they haven't refilled your sweet tea enough times because you're on your 20th glass. You can say, I'm going to teach her a lesson or him a lesson. I'm going to tip. Okay, just please don't tell me you go to Farallon. And I want you to remember this as I'm finishing. The guy on the donkey will have longer lasting influence every time than the guy on the warhorse. The only reason we know who the guy on the warhorse was because of the guy on the donkey. So I hope that as you look at your life, ask yourself, is there any areas in my life that I've been a warhorse and I should have been being a donkey? Is there any way that I need to let go of this warhorse that's within me? To my best friends of Farallon Church and anybody that's watching this live stream, may we be brave enough to uplift those around us instead of holding them back. May we be courageous enough to die to the war horses in all of us. And may we choose to live as a donkey while never, ever, ever being a jackass. I love y'all. Grace and peace.